I'm going to stop you right there. That was all he said before cutting me off mid-sentence. Mid-thought. My manager leaned back in his chair, smiled tightly, and turned his body toward the woman sitting beside him. My seat from last week. From today forward, she'll be taking point on this. My chest dropped. No warning. No conversation. Just 20 pairs of eyes snapping toward me while my work, was handed over like it never belonged to me. The conference room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in. I could hear someone shifting uncomfortably in their chair. Another person coughed. But nobody spoke up. Nobody questioned it. They just watched as Derek Sloan erased 5 years of my career with a single sentence. The projector hummed above us, still displaying my quarterly projections, my data, my analysis. But now it would be hers to present next week. I felt my face burn, but I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I nodded once, slowly, because reacting would have given him what he wanted. Inside, though, something cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet fracture that told me everything had changed. This wasn't a reassignment. This was an erasure. Derek wanted me to argue, to show emotion, to give him a reason to call me difficult or unprofessional. I could see it in the way he watched me, waiting. So I gave him nothing. Just a calm nod and steady eye contact that said I understood exactly what this was. The meeting continued without me. Bryn Calder started talking about implementation strategies I'd written 3 months ago. She stumbled over some of the technical terms. Derek jumped in to help her. His voice warm and encouraging. The same voice that used to be reserved for my ideas. This is the moment my career was almost stolen. My manager tried replacing me with his new hire, until my report hit the CEO's desk. But that Tuesday morning, sitting in that conference room with my hands folded in my lap and my heart pounding in my ears, I didn't know yet how this would end. I just knew that something fundamental had shifted. The rules I'd been playing by, work hard, stay quiet, let results speak, those rules had changed without warning. And I was the last one to know. Derek had made his move publicly, strategically, in front of the entire team. It wasn't just about giving my project away. It was about establishing a new hierarchy. One where I didn't matter anymore. One where Bryn Calder, with her polished resume and eager smile, was the future. And I was just legacy cost. My name is Kelsey Moore. I'd been with the company 5 years. Quietly consistent. The kind of employee people lean on without realizing it, until you're gone. I wasn't flashy. I didn't network aggressively or volunteer for every high-visibility project. I just delivered. Month after month. Year after year. I built systems that worked. I solved problems before they became crises. I made other people look good, including Derek. And standing across from me was Derek Sloan, the man who'd decided I was disposable. He was 42, ambitious, and recently divorced. The kind of manager who talked about innovation but punished creativity. Who praised teamwork but pitted people against each other. I'd watched him do it to others. I just never thought I'd be next. But there I was, sitting in my usual chair, in my usual spot, suddenly feeling like a stranger in my own department. A month earlier, Derek had started acting strange. Short replies. Meetings without me. Praise that suddenly stopped mid-sentence. First I thought I'd done something wrong. Missed a deadline or made a mistake in a report. I reviewed everything twice. Triple-checked my work. But there was nothing. No errors. No problems. Just Derek's growing distance. Then he hired Bryn Calder. Bright smile, fresh resume. And no idea she'd been dropped into the middle of a slow-burning war. She joined our team on a Monday. Derek introduced her in our morning stand-up. His voice enthusiastic in a way I hadn't heard in weeks. Bryn comes to us from Palmer Industries, he said. She's going to help us scale our operations and bring fresh perspective. Fresh perspective. That phrase would haunt me for the next month. It became Derek's favorite justification for everything that followed. Bryn wasn't rude. That almost made it worse. She'd ask questions about systems I built, nod politely, then repeat my answers in meetings like they were hers. "I've been thinking about workflow optimization," she'd say, describing exactly what I'd explained to her 2 days earlier. Derek would beam at her like a proud parent. "That's exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need," he'd respond, never mentioning that the idea came from documentation I'd written last year. I was invisible in rooms I used to run. Team members started directing questions to Bryn that should have come to me. She'd glance at me for answers, I'd provide them, and she'd deliver them back to the group as if she'd figured it out herself. It was a strange kind of theft. Invisible but devastating. Like watching someone slowly move into your house while you're still living there. 2 weeks later, Derek announced Bryn's leadership on a project I'd launched 18 months earlier. The Cascade Initiative. I'd built it from nothing, researched the market, designed the framework, pitched it to leadership, and spent 6 months implementing phase 1. It was working. Revenue was up 17%. Customer retention had improved. Every metric proved it was worth the investment. And now it was hers. "Bryn's going to take Cascade into phase 2, Derek announced during our weekly team meeting. "She's bringing fresh perspective to the implementation strategy." There was that phrase again. Fresh perspective. I heard, "You're old news." The room stayed quiet. A few people glanced at me, uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge him. Bryn smiled graciously. "Kelsey laid excellent groundwork," she said. "I'm excited to build on her foundation." Sounded generous. Felt like being erased in real time. That project wasn't just pride, it was my performance review, my promotion track, my leverage. Without it, I was nothing but a name on payroll. And Derek knew that. The Cascade Initiative was my proof of concept. It showed I could think strategically, manage complex implementations, and deliver measurable results. Leadership had noticed. I'd been told, quietly, unofficially, that a senior position was opening up in the next quarter. My name was being discussed. But all of that depended on Cascade's continued success. And now that success would be credited to someone else. Derek had surgically removed my biggest achievement and handed it to his new favorite. It wasn't random. It wasn't about efficiency or team dynamics. It was calculated. He wanted me gone, but he needed me irrelevant first. That way, when I eventually left or got pushed out, nobody would question it. She'd already proven herself capable, they'd say. Kelsey was just there. I didn't argue, didn't vent to coworkers, didn't confront him. I started documenting everything. That night, I went home and opened a new folder on my personal laptop. I labeled it simply, Records. Then I started pulling emails, calendar invites, Slack messages, meeting notes, anything that showed a timeline of who did what and when. I wasn't planning revenge. I was building a record of the truth. Because in corporate environments, truth is whatever the person with the most authority says it is. Unless you have receipts. So I collected receipts. Every email where Derek approved my strategies. Every document where my name appeared as the project lead. Every message where team members asked me questions and I provided answers that later became Bryn's insights. I organized everything chronologically. Kept my notes factual. No emotion. No commentary. Just evidence. Emails. Timeline changes. Metrics. Slack messages where Derek approved my decisions. Then praised Bryn for executing them. Saved versions. Receipts. I downloaded everything to my personal drive, careful not to violate any company policies. Everything I saved was work I'd created or communications I was part of. Nothing confidential. Nothing proprietary. Just the paper trail that showed who had actually done the work. Beats loud every time. That's what my father used to say. He worked in manufacturing for 30 years, survived 3 corporate mergers and 2 layoffs. When someone comes for your job, he told me once, don't fight them with your fists. Fight them with your work. Let the record speak. So that's what I did. While Derek paraded Bryn around as his protege, I quietly built an archive that told a different story. Not my version, just the facts. And facts are harder to argue with than feelings. Derek got comfortable. He'd interrupt me mid-meeting. Assign Bryn tasks I was already handling. Joke about how fast things move with new blood. The jokes were the worst part. They had an edge to them, a casual cruelty dressed up as workplace banter. Kelsey's been doing this the same way for years, he'd say with a light laugh. Sometimes you need someone who can see things differently. The implication was clear. I was stuck. Dated. Replaceable. Bryn would laugh along, uncomfortable but unwilling to contradict him. Other team members stayed silent. That's how it works. Nobody wants to defend someone who's losing. It makes you look like you're next. So they stayed quiet and let Derek rewrite history one meeting at a time. Arrogance makes people sloppy. That's what I kept telling myself. And I was right. The more confident he became, the more careless he got. One afternoon, he blamed me for a missed deadline, one he'd personally moved without telling me. We were in a leadership sync, a weekly meeting with department heads. Derek mentioned that the Cascade Phase 2 timeline had slipped. Kelsey was supposed to have the transition documentation ready by last Friday, he said. We're now playing catch-up. I felt everyone's eyes on me. But I didn't panic. Because I knew exactly what had happened. That deadline was originally set for the following month. Derek had moved it up 2 weeks ago in a private email to Bryn, copying me as an afterthought. I'd flagged the timeline as aggressive and asked for clarification. He never responded. So the work continued on the original schedule. I didn't defend myself in that meeting. I just nodded and said I'd prioritize it. But later that day, I forwarded the original email chain to my personal folder. Added it to my growing collection. One more receipt. I requested permission to compile a quarterly performance overview, for transparency. I framed it carefully. With all the changes in team structure and project ownership, I think it would help everyone to have a clear record of who's responsible for what. It'll make performance reviews easier. Derek barely looked up from his phone. Sure. Go ahead. He waved his hand dismissively, already thinking about something else. He didn't see it as a threat. Why would he? I was the reliable one. The one who did paperwork without complaint. Creating a performance overview was exactly the kind of tedious administrative work he expected from me. But that was his mistake. He assumed I was harmless. Assumed I'd accepted my new role as background support. He didn't realize I was building something. Something that would speak louder than any confrontation ever could. That afternoon I started drafting the structure. Objectives, deliverables, timelines, attribution. All standard categories. All impossible to argue with. I built the report slowly. Clean. Professional. Impossible to argue with. I worked on it during lunch breaks and after hours, pulling data from every project our department had completed in the last 18 months. I organized it by initiative, showing projected outcomes versus actual results. Then I listed contributors. Not based on current assignments, but on documented evidence. Who proposed the strategy? Who built the framework? Who executed the work? The Cascade Initiative took up 3 pages. Every phase was detailed with dates, decisions, and responsible parties. My name appeared 73 times. Bryn's name appeared 6 times, all recent, all related to tasks I'd handed off during the transition. Derek's name appeared often too, mostly approving my recommendations. I didn't editorialize. I didn't need to. The data told the story. Revenue growth, process improvements, risk mitigation, and it showed who had actually done the work. Derek's name appeared often, so did mine. Bryn's appeared barely at all. I didn't remove anything. I didn't add commentary. Facts don't need emotion. That was the power of the document. It wasn't a complaint. It wasn't an accusation. It was just a thorough, professional accounting of our department's performance over the past 18 months. Any executive reading it would see patterns immediately. They'd see which names appeared consistently beside successful outcomes. They'd see which names appeared beside strategy development versus execution. They'd see the timeline of when Bryn joined and how attributions suddenly shifted without corresponding changes in results. I included email timestamps for major decisions, meeting notes that showed who presented which ideas, even Slack messages where team members came to me with questions. Nothing was fabricated. Nothing was exaggerated. It was all just true. And truth, presented clearly, is devastating. I submitted the report through the official executive channel, standard protocol for quarterly insights. Our company had a portal where department-level reports could be uploaded for leadership review. It was supposed to promote transparency and cross-departmental learning. Most managers submitted brief summaries. I submitted 27 pages of detailed analysis. I didn't tag Derek. I didn't warn him. I simply uploaded it on a Thursday afternoon with a subject line: Q2 Performance Overview, Operations Department. Then I marked it as available to the executive team, which included our CEO, Alastair Wynne, and the other C-suite leaders. The system sent automatic notifications. I watched the read receipts pop up over the next 2 days. Alastair opened it Friday morning. He spent 47 minutes on the document, according to the analytics. Then he forwarded it to 2 other people. The ripple had started. For a week nothing happened. Derek kept smiling. Bryn kept leading meetings. Co-workers whispered. Waited. On the surface, everything continued as normal. Derek announced updates to the Cascade Initiative. Bryn presented a roadmap for Phase 3. Team meetings followed their usual rhythm. But small things started changing. The VP of Strategy asked me to join a planning call, unusual for my current position. Someone from finance requested clarification on project timelines, specifically asking for my input. The whispers in the break room got quieter when I walked in. Not hostile, just cautious, like people were recalculating something they'd previously taken for granted. Kept my head down, did my work, added a few more documents to my personal archive just in case. But mostly I just waited. 'Cause I knew how these things worked. Truth takes time to land. But when it does, it lands hard. Then a calendar invite appeared. Executive review, mandatory attendance. The meeting was scheduled for Tuesday morning, conference room 3. 3 names were listed. Alastair Wynne, Derek Sloan, and me. No agenda. No context. Just mandatory attendance. I stared at the invite for a long moment. This was it. Whatever was coming, it started here. Derek's name was on it. So was mine. His smile that morning didn't reach his eyes. I arrived early Tuesday, dressed more carefully than usual. Conference room 3 was the executive space, the one with the good chairs and the view of downtown. Alastair was already there, sitting at the head of the table with a printed copy of my report in front of him. Derek arrived 3 minutes late, confident and relaxed. He shook Alastair's hand, made a joke about traffic. Then he sat down and finally seemed to notice the report. His smile flickered, just for a second, but I saw it. The CEO, Alastair Wynne, sat at the head of the table, flipping pages slowly. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair and a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthlessly fair. He'd built this company from 30 employees to over 800 in 12 years. People respected him because he didn't tolerate politics or posturing. He cared about results. Which is exactly why I'd submitted my report through official channels instead of trying to schedule a private meeting. Alastair didn't look up when he asked, "Who led the operational rebuild last year?" Silence stretched. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking. Derek shifted in his seat, glancing at the report, clearly trying to figure out which project Alastair meant. The operational rebuild had been my initiative. 6 months of restructuring our entire workflow system. It saved the company $400,000 annually. But it hadn't been glamorous work, so nobody talked about it much. Alastair looked at me. "According to this, you did." I met his gaze steadily. "Yes, sir. That was my project. I started it in January of last year and completed implementation in July." Derek shifted in his chair. His voice was smooth when he spoke. Kelsey did excellent work on the execution. I provided strategic oversight and, I'm looking at emails here, Alistair interrupted, tapping the report. The strategy memo came from Kelsey. The framework design came from Kelsey. The implementation plan came from Kelsey. Your emails approved her recommendations. He flipped another page. So what exactly did you provide besides approval? Derek's face tightened. I provided guidance and direction. Project management requires leadership that Kelsey reports directly to you, Alistair said. So yes, you approved her work. But this report suggests she's been doing significantly more than execution. Bryn's face went pale. She hadn't been mentioned yet, but she could see where this was going. Question by question, Derek contradicted the report. He tried to reframe projects as collaborative efforts. Tried to emphasize his role in approvals and guidance. But every time he spoke, Alistair referenced specific emails. Exact dates. Documented decisions. This email from March shows Kelsey proposing the Cascade Initiative framework. This timeline shows Kelsey managing implementation for 6 months before Bryn joined the team. These meeting notes show Kelsey presenting strategy updates to leadership. Each correction tightened the room. Derek's confident smile disappeared. He started speaking faster, trying to explain context and nuance. But facts don't care about context. The numbers were clear. The timeline was clear. The attribution was clear. Derek had been taking credit for work he didn't do. And now he was caught in documented lies. Arrogance has a sound when it collapses. Sounds like stuttering explanations that go nowhere. Like excuses that don't match the evidence. Like silence that follows when you finally run out of things to say. The meeting ended early. Alistair closed the report and stood up. Derek, please wait here. HR will join us shortly. His voice was calm but final. No room for argument. Derek's face drained of color. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the moment he understood. This wasn't a performance review. This was the end. HR followed Derek out 20 minutes later. I was asked to wait in a different conference room. I sat there for an hour, watching the city through the windows, not sure what came next. Finally, Alistair's assistant came to get me. She walked me to his office, knocked once, and left me at the door. Alistair gestured to a chair. Sit down, Kelsey. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. I owe you an apology. This should never have gotten this far. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Derek is no longer with the company, he continued. We're conducting a full review of his management practices. By Friday, Derek was gone. Bryn was reassigned. I was asked to take over the department temporarily. We need someone who knows the work, Alistair said. Someone the team trusts. It was a strange feeling. Not victorious. Not even particularly satisfying. Just right. Like something that had been off balance finally settled back into place. The team adjusted quickly. Most of them seemed relieved more than anything. Bryn apologized to me privately. I didn't know, she said. I should have asked more questions. I believed her. She'd been a pawn in Derek's game, same as me. Just playing a different role. You're good at what you do, I told her. You just got dropped into a bad situation. Learn from it. She nodded, grateful. Within a week, she was thriving in her new role in product development. Somewhere she could build her own reputation instead of inheriting someone else's. And I started rebuilding my department. Properly this time. 3 months later, the role became permanent. New title. New salary. Direct access to leadership. They announced it in a company-wide email. Director of Operations. It felt surreal seeing my name attached to that title. Not because I didn't deserve it. I knew I did. But because the path to get there had been so twisted. I'd almost lost everything. Almost let someone else take credit for years of my work. Almost accepted that quiet erasure as just how things worked. But I hadn't. And that made all the difference. No celebration. Just quiet validation. My team sent messages of support. Colleagues I barely knew reached out to congratulate me. But the moment that mattered most was simple. It was sitting at my new desk in my new office, looking at the Cascade Initiative dashboard and seeing my name listed as program director. Not Bryn's name. Not Derek's name. Where it should have been all along. I never heard from Derek again. And that's the point. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Justice doesn't need witnesses. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is tell the truth and let it land exactly where it belongs. I didn't destroy Derek's career out of spite. I just stopped letting him steal mine. I didn't sabotage him. I just documented reality. And reality, when presented clearly and professionally, is more powerful than any confrontation. People ask me sometimes how I stayed so calm during those weeks. How I didn't break down or lash out. The truth is, I almost did. Many times. But I knew that emotional reactions would have given Derek exactly what he needed. Proof that I was difficult, unprofessional, not leadership material. So instead I turned my anger into evidence. My frustration into documentation. My hurt into a 27-page report that spoke louder than any argument ever could. That's the lesson. When someone tries to erase you, don't fight them. Just make sure the record shows you were always there.